Hello and welcome back. Tonight we are going to do something a little dangerous. We are going to take a story you think you already know, and we are going to take it apart, piece by piece, until what is left looks almost nothing like what you started with. You have heard the names. Everyone has. Romeo and Juliet. Two teenagers. A balcony. A poison. A dagger. The end. You sat through it in high school, maybe with a bad paperback, and a teacher who kept stopping to explain what wherefore means. You saw one of the movies, the one with Leonardo DiCaprio, or the one before that, or the ballet, or the musical, or the 1,000 other versions that have been recycling those same two names for 400 years. It is everywhere. It is wallpaper. It is the shorthand the whole world uses when it wants to say, this love is real. This love is serious. This love is worth dying for, and you think you know the story. But here is the first reversal, and we are barely 30 seconds in. The real story of Romeo and Juliet is not a love story at all. Or rather, it is a love story the same way that a shipwreck is a sailing story. The love is real. The love is genuine and consuming, and in its own way, beautiful. But what sank the ship had nothing to do with the two people clinging to the wreckage. And by the time we are done tonight, you will understand exactly what did. Find a comfortable position. Let your shoulders drop. Let your jaw unclench. Because we are going back to the beginning. Not to Shakespeare's Globe Theatre in 1597, but further back, much further, to the narrow stone streets of a city called Verona in northern Italy, sometime in the 13th or 14th century, a city that smelled of river water and old stone, and the particular kind of violence that comes not from war, but from neighbours. Let us start with a question that almost nobody asks. Why Verona? Shakespeare was English. He never set foot in Italy. He almost certainly never walked the streets of Verona, never stood at the Adige River, never smelled the market air of that small, prosperous, perpetually feuding city. And yet he set his most famous play there, not in London, not in a fictional kingdom, in a specific real city, with a specific real river, with specific real family names. Why? Here is why, and this is the first thing that changes everything. Verona was already famous for this story before Shakespeare ever touched it. By the time Shakespeare wrote his play in the 1590s, the tale of these two lovers had been circulating through Italian literature for over 60 years. A man named Luigi da Porto published a version of it in 1530. A man named Matteo Bandello, a bishop of all things, a man of God who apparently could not stop thinking about doomed teenagers, published another version in 1554. That version spread across Europe like fire in dry grass. It was translated into French. From the French, an Englishman named Arthur Brooke turned it into a long narrative poem in 1562, a poem Shakespeare almost certainly read, borrowed from heavily, and transformed into something the world could not forget. So here is the reversal. Shakespeare did not invent Romeo and Juliet. He inherited them. They were already old when he found them, already worn smooth from being passed between hands, But here is what Shakespeare did that none of the others could manage. He took a story everyone already knew, a story with a known ending, a story where you walk in knowing both of them die, and he made it so that audiences still cried. Still cried knowing the ending, still cry now, 400 years later, having known the ending since childhood. That is not luck. That is a writer who understood something about this story that even its creators had not fully grasped. Shakespeare took a story about two unlucky teenagers and turned it into a mirror. And what that mirror reflects, what it has always reflected, is not romance. It is the violence we do to our children in the name of family honor. That is what this story is about. Always was. We just kept looking at the wrong part of the picture. Let us talk about Verona, because the city is not backdrop. The city is the weapon. In the 13th and 14th centuries, northern Italy was not a country. It was a collection of city-states, each one ruled by a different family, a different lord, a different arrangement of alliances that could collapse overnight into bloodshed. There was no national army to keep order, no central law that everyone agreed to follow. What there was power, and power belonged to whoever could hold it. In this world, powerful families did not merely compete for political office. They competed for everything. Contracts, marriages, church appointments, the best pew in the cathedral, the right to walk on a particular side of a particular road. An insult absorbed without response was not just personal embarrassment. It was a public signal broadcast to every watching eye in the city that your family could be pushed around. And a family that could be pushed around was a family whose land could be taken, whose daughters could be dishonored, whose sons could be killed without consequence. Honor, in this world, was not a virtue. It was a survival mechanism. To lose face was to lose everything. So you could not lose face. Not ever. Not for any reason. Not even when the cost of defending your face was the life of your own child. This is the city Romeo and Juliet were born into. This is the air they breathed from their first day. Now here is the detail that stops most people cold when they first encounter it. Dante Alighieri, yes, that Dante, the one who wrote the Divine Comedy, the most famous literary journey through hell and heaven in Western history, was writing in the early 14th century. He saw what was happening in these cities. He was so appalled by the civil violence, the constant feuding, the private wars being waged in public streets, that he wrote about it with open contempt, and he mentioned, specifically by name, the Montecchi and the Cappelletti, the families at the heart of our story. He did not mention them as romantics. He mentioned them as a diagnosis. To Dante, these families were examples of everything that was destroying Italian civilization. They were not star-crossed lovers waiting to happen. They were a symptom. Let that sit for a moment. The families at the heart of the most famous love story in the world were, to the most famous poet of the medieval world, proof that society was failing. They were not romantic. They were a warning that nobody listened to. Here is where the play does something genuinely strange, something nobody seems to notice until it is pointed out. In Shakespeare's play, no one knows how the feud started. That is not an oversight. That is the entire point. The very first scene opens with two servants, not lords, not knights, but working men, servants from the Capulet household, looking for a fight with anyone from the Montague household. When one of them is asked why, he essentially shrugs. He invokes an ancient grudge, something old, something nobody can pin down anymore. No one living can remember the original offense. No one can tell you what wrong was done, by whom to whom, on which day, over what piece of land or whose daughter, or whose insult at whose dinner table. The feud has simply outlived its own origin. It has become its own reason. This is one of Shakespeare's sharpest observations about human nature, and it is not comfortable. We are perfectly capable of continuing to destroy each other long after we have forgotten why we started. Hatred does not need fuel once it has become culture. It runs on itself. The violence no longer needs justification. It only needs a target. And the targets, in this case, are children who are handed an old war like a family heirloom and never given the option of giving it back. This is the world Romeo is born into. This is the world Juliet is born into. Both of them on opposite sides of something neither of them chose, in a city where even the servants are primed to draw swords at a glance. The trap is built before either of them takes their first breath. Meet Romeo. Here is where the story makes its second major reversal. The one that usually lands like cold water on anyone paying attention. When we meet Romeo, he is not in love with Juliet. He is in love with someone else entirely. A woman named Rosaline. She never appears on stage. She has apparently made it very clear she is not interested in Romeo, and has in fact taken a vow of chastity. Romeo, in response to this information, has completely collapsed into theatrical despair. He is mooning. He is sighing. He is wandering the streets before dawn and locking himself in his room to avoid sunlight. His friends are already exhausted by it. His cousin Benvolio, who is the most sensible person in the play, and who notably is the only major character who survives it, tries to talk some reason into him. His friend Mercutio, and we will come back to Mercutio, because he is the engine the whole play runs on, mocks Romeo with the cheerful savagery of someone who has been listening to this for weeks. Romeo is, at the start of the play, not a hero, not a romantic ideal. He is a 17-year-old boy who is extremely bad at being rejected. Then he goes to a party he was not supposed to attend. He goes specifically to see Rosaline, who will also be there, in the hope that seeing her again might somehow fix the unfixable. He puts on a mask, slips into the Capulet house with his friends, and scans the room. And then he sees Juliet. He does not know who she is yet. He knows only what his eyes tell him, and what his eyes tell him stops everything else in his head. Rosaline is gone. The party is gone. Every poem he ever wrote, and every sleepless dawn, and every sigh that exhausted his friends, gone, instantly, completely, as if they had never existed. He asks a servant who she is. The servant tells him she is a Capulet, and Romeo says essentially, well, that is a problem. He goes to speak to her anyway. This matters enormously. Shakespeare wrote him this way on purpose, because Romeo is a person of total, overwhelming feeling. When he feels something, he feels all of it, all at once, with no filter between the emotion and the action. Rosaline was everything to him, until she was nothing. Juliet will be everything to him, until the end of his life, which, as it turns out, is not very far away. The girl he has been suffering over for weeks evaporates like morning fog the moment a new light appears. Is what he feels for Juliet different? Is it real? Shakespeare refuses to answer that question cleanly, and that refusal is a masterstroke. There is something there that neither of them has ever felt before, something that is not just infatuation, but it is also undeniably young, undeniably impulsive, and undeniably the kind of feeling that makes intelligent people do catastrophically stupid things. And that is exactly why it is so devastating. Now forget everything the Valentine's Day card version told you, because Juliet is the more interesting character by a considerable distance, and 400 years of romantic mythology have done everything possible to make you miss it. Juliet is 13 years old. Her mother, Lady Capulet, states this plainly in Act 1 and mentions in the same breath that she herself was already a mother at roughly that age. This is not treated as unusual. It is treated as a timeline. Juliet is approaching the age of her mother's first marriage. The clock is ticking. A husband has been found. His name is Paris. He is older, wealthy, well-connected, thoroughly appropriate, and Juliet has never once been asked what she thinks of him. To understand what happens next, you need to see exactly what Juliet's life looks like at the start of this play. She has a nurse who has cared for her since birth and loves her genuinely. She has a mother who is more administrator than parent, managing her daughter's future the way you manage a business asset. She has a father who loves her in his way, but whose love has a shape, a very specific shape, which is, you will marry whom I choose, when I choose, and your feelings about it are not relevant to the decision. She has no power. She has no choices. She has a future that has been entirely planned by other people, for reasons that have nothing to do with her happiness. And then she meets Romeo at a party she did not choose to attend, and everything inside her wakes up at once. Here is the thing about Juliet that the Valentine's Day card version always erases. She is not naive. She is not swept away. She is 13 years old, and she is without question the most clear-eyed person in the entire play. Within hours of meeting Romeo, she is already thinking 3 steps ahead. She is the one who brings up marriage first, because she understands that what she is feeling cannot survive in the world she lives in without a legal structure to protect it. She is the one who, during the famous balcony scene, which takes place that same night, Romeo, having followed her home, climbed into her family's garden and stood in the dark below her window, like a man with absolutely no sense of self-preservation. She is the one who does the clear thinking. Romeo wants to swear his love by the moon. Juliet tells him not to, because the moon is inconstant. It changes every night. She does not want inconstant. She wants something she can hold on to when everything else is shifting. She is 13 years old, and she already knows the difference between the electricity of new feeling and the steadiness required to actually build a life. She is wise enough to see the cliff clearly. She walks toward it anyway. And that, not her youth, not her beauty, not the famous balcony and the famous words, that is what makes Juliet heartbreaking. She is not a victim of ignorance. She is a person who made a fully informed choice to love someone in a world that had decided in advance that this particular love was not permitted. She chose it anyway, because the alternative was a life that had been decided for her before she was old enough to have an opinion. She looked at the cage she had been born into, and she chose the cliff. Now we reach the hinge point of the entire story, the moment everything breaks, and it is not the moment you think it is. It is not the wedding. It is not the balcony. It is not the tomb. It is a street fight in the middle of the afternoon, and the person who matters most in it is not Romeo, and not Juliet, and not even the man who gets killed. It is Mercutio. Mercutio is Romeo's closest friend, and he is arguably the most alive character Shakespeare ever put on a stage. He is brilliant, irreverent, funny in the way only people who are also very angry can be funny. He speaks truth at an angle, through jokes, because if he said what he actually thought straight out, the world would not be able to hold it. He mocks Romeo's romantic agony. He mocks the dueling culture that makes young men strut around, looking for reasons to draw swords. He mocks both families with equal energy, the Capulets who want Romeo dead, and the Montagues who want to defend him. In a play full of people who have taken sides, Mercutio is the only one who refuses. He stands outside the feud, outside the love story, outside all of it, and he laughs at it. He is the audience's representative on the stage. He is the voice of anyone watching who thinks, this is all completely insane. And then the feud kills him anyway. Here is what happens. Tybalt, Juliet's cousin, is the feud's truest believer. He is not a villain in the moustache-twirling sense. He is a young man who has been so completely shaped by the honor culture around him that he cannot conceive of existence outside it. When Romeo, of all people, appears at the Capulet party, Tybalt takes it as a personal violation and challenges him to a duel. Romeo, who married Juliet that morning in secret, now considers Tybalt his family. He refuses to fight. He speaks gently. He tries to make peace. He uses the word love, which is the most confusing word he could possibly use in this context, and Tybalt has no idea why Romeo is suddenly acting like his friend. Mercutio cannot stand to watch it. He reads Romeo's restraint as cowardice, because in this world, peace and cowardice look identical from the outside, and he steps in. He draws his sword. Tybalt draws his. Romeo, trying to stop it, steps between them. And in that exact moment of attempted peace, Tybalt's blade goes under Romeo's arm and into Mercutio. Mercutio, dying in the street, says something that has followed this play across 4 centuries. A plague on both your houses. Not one house. Both. He is not blaming Tybalt. He is not blaming the Capulets. He is blaming the entire machine. The whole architecture of inherited, hatred that put a sword in Tybalt's hand, that put Romeo in the position of choosing between peace and watching his friend die, that put Mercutio in a street fight he had no personal stake in except loyalty. He blames the feud, and then he is gone. And Romeo, who 1 minute ago was the gentlest man on that street, picks up his sword and kills Tybalt. Just like that. In the same afternoon he got married. The boy who said "I love thee" is now a murderer, not because he is violent, not because he wanted this, but because the world he was born into, the world that shaped every reflex in his body, gave him exactly 2 options in that moment. Avenge your friend, or leave his death unanswered. In the honor culture of Verona, leaving Mercutio's death unanswered would be the deepest possible betrayal. He made the choice the world had been training him to make since birth, and that choice ended everything. Romeo is exiled. The prince, who represents the civil authority that has been failing to contain this feud for years, spares Romeo's life. He banishes him instead, and in this world, banishment is its own kind of death. Romeo cannot return to Verona, cannot return to Juliet. The marriage they rushed into that morning is now suspended in a void from which there is no clear exit, and Juliet, on the same day she became a wife, receives news in such rapid sequence that it reads almost like a dark joke from the universe. Her cousin Tybalt is dead. Her husband is the killer. Her husband is banished. And oh, her parents have decided she will marry Paris in 3 days. 3 days. Walk through what Juliet experiences in these hours. She wakes up a girl who has never been kissed. She marries in secret. She loses her cousin. She discovers her husband killed him. She loses her husband to exile. She is told she is getting married again, to a different man, whether she likes it or not. And all of this happens before sunset. Her nurse, the person closest to her in the world, the woman who raised her, advises her to simply forget Romeo and accept Paris. The nurse is not cruel. She is practical. In her view, Romeo is gone, and Paris is here, and Juliet needs to survive. But to Juliet, this advice is a kind of abandonment that closes the last door. She cannot go to her parents. She cannot go to her nurse. She has one person left, Friar Lawrence, the priest who performed her secret marriage, a well-meaning man who is about to make the most consequential mistake in the play. The plan Friar Lawrence devises is, this is important, not a bad plan. It is almost reasonable. He gives Juliet a potion. It will cause a death-like sleep. No pulse, no breath, cold skin, the works. She will be placed in the Capulet family tomb. The friar will send word to Romeo, who will ride back to Verona, slip into the tomb, wait for her to wake, and the 2 of them will escape together. A new life, somewhere else, beyond the reach of both families. It is the plan of a man who genuinely wants to help and has no good options. He is not reckless. He is not stupid. He is a person trying to use the only tools available to him in a situation that should never have reached this point. He sends a letter to Romeo. The letter never arrives. This is the cruelest detail in the entire play. Not a villain, not a betrayal, not a choice anyone made wrong. A plague, a real one, the kind that sealed cities and stopped travelers and made people terrified to carry letters from infected areas, quarantines the friar's messenger. The man sits in a locked house with an undelivered letter while everything falls apart in Verona. Meanwhile, someone else reaches Romeo first. A well-meaning friend who heard only half the story, who tells Romeo with complete confidence that Juliet is dead. And Romeo, without hesitating, without waiting to verify, without doing a single thing except feeling the full force of the worst news of his life, decides exactly what he is going to do about it. He buys poison from an apothecary who is too poor to refuse him. He rides for Verona. There is a scene in the tomb that most productions cut because it slows down the ending. It deserves more attention than it gets. When Romeo arrives at the Capulet tomb, Paris is already there. Paris, the man Juliet's parents chose for her, the man who did nothing wrong at any point in this story, who courted a girl his society told him was available, and genuinely mourned her when she died. Paris is at the tomb leaving flowers. Romeo arrives. They fight. Romeo kills him. It is the last unnecessary death in a play built entirely of unnecessary deaths. Paris was not part of the feud. He had no quarrel with Romeo. He was simply in the wrong place, inside someone else's disaster, and that was enough. Romeo goes into the tomb. He sees Juliet. He speaks to her, because this is Shakespeare, and the language does not stop even here. And some of the most beautiful words in the play are spoken by Romeo to a woman he believes is dead. He takes the poison. He dies. Juliet wakes up. The friar arrives seconds later, the worst possible timing in 400 years of theatre, and when he realizes what has happened, he tries to get Juliet to leave. He is afraid. He hears noise outside. He tells her to come with him, and she refuses. She looks at Romeo. She understands immediately, not just that he is dead, but the whole chain. The letter, the timing, the potion wearing off exactly too late. She understands all of it in a matter of seconds, and she does not have a long speech. She is not theatrical about it. She takes Romeo's dagger and she uses it, and that is the end of both of them. Here is what happens next, and this is the part of the story that the romantic retelling always treats as the ending. It is not the ending. It is the most important scene in the play, and almost nobody talks about it. The families find their children dead in the tomb together. They grieve, and then, and here is the part that history tends to soften, to sand down into something easier to look at, they make a deal. Montague and Capulet, standing over the bodies of their children, with the prince who failed to stop any of this standing beside them, announce that the feud is over. They commission golden statues of each other's child, gleaming, expensive, permanent monuments. Capulet promises a statue of Romeo. Montague promises a statue of Juliet. Golden, beautiful, on display forever. Read that again. The same men who raised these children inside a war that consumed them, who arranged Juliet's marriage to a man she did not choose, who drove Romeo to a secret wedding at 17, who created and maintained and breathed life into the feud that killed everyone in this story. Those men are now going to memorialize their children in gold. They are going to make their grief into public art. And the prince, who had the power to stop the feud years ago and never used it, who shows up at every scene of violence and delivers speeches and accomplishes nothing, says, "Some shall be pardoned, and some shall be punished." And then the sun rises on Verona as it has always done, unchanged and indifferent. That is the ending Shakespeare wrote. Not a triumph, not a redemption. Two fathers who finally learned something, and learned it too late to matter, standing in a tomb that should have been a bedroom. Golden statues, as if gold could undo a body. Now step back. Breathe. We have been inside the story long enough. Now we look at what it is actually built from. For 400 years, Romeo and Juliet has been sold to the world as the ultimate love story. It is on cards and posters and perfume advertisements. It is the reference point every romance reaches for when it wants to signal that this, here, is the real thing. People use these names as shorthand, for we belong together, no matter what stands between us. But go back to what actually happens in the play. Their love story lasts approximately 5 days. 5 days. Day 1. They meet at a party Romeo was not supposed to attend. They speak for a few minutes. They kiss. They discover each other's names and realize the problem. Day 2. The balcony, the secret marriage. Day 3. Mercutio dies. Tybalt dies. Romeo is exiled. Day 4. Romeo and Juliet spend the night together. He leaves at dawn. She is told about Paris. Day 5. The potion, the tomb, the end. 5 days. 2 deaths before theirs. A forged marriage, a missed letter, a quarantine, a misunderstanding, and then 2 more deaths. This is the great love story of Western civilization. And the reason it works, the reason it has always worked, is not because 5 days is enough time to fall in love. Maybe it is, maybe it is not. The reason it works is because of what stands against them. Because every force in the world they were born into, their families, their city, their culture, the economics of marriage, the ethics of honor, the politics of the street, every single one of those forces was already arranged against them before they ever spoke a word to each other. Romeo and Juliet are not destroyed by love. They are destroyed by a world that decided what they were worth and who they could belong to long before they had any say in the matter. They are destroyed by timing. Yes, by the letter that never came. By the potion that outlasted the plan. But timing is not fate. Timing is just the final thing that goes wrong in a chain of things that were always wrong. The feud was wrong. The honor culture was wrong. The world that gave Juliet 2 choices, Paris or disgrace, and called that freedom, was wrong. The city that let 2 families run a private war in its public streets for so long that no one could remember how it started, that was wrong. Romeo and Juliet were not unlucky. They were young and human, and alive in a world that had already written their story before they were born. And they tried, briefly and desperately and with everything they had, to write a different one. They failed. But the attempt mattered. The attempt is what we are still talking about 400 years later. There is something that gets lost every single time this story gets retold as pure romance, and we need to say it clearly before we finish. The most important line in the play is not the balcony speech. It is not what's in a name. It is not parting is such sweet sorrow. It is not thus with a kiss I die. It is Mercutio's line, spoken in a street, while he is dying from a wound he got, because Romeo tried to make peace. A plague on both your houses. Mercutio is the one person in the entire play who sees the whole machine clearly, because he is the one person standing slightly outside it. He is not in love. He is not bound to either family by blood. He has no honor to defend, no ancient grudge to uphold. He has only eyes, and what his eyes see is two families manufacturing violence and calling it dignity, and distributing that violence to everyone around them, whether those people want it or not. Romeo did not want the feud. He married a Capulet. Juliet did not want the feud. She married a Montague in secret to escape it. Benvolio, gentle and quiet, begged people to put their swords away from the very first scene. Even the friar, marrying them in the hope that their union might end the whole thing, was trying to find a way out. None of it mattered. The feud came for all of them anyway, the way weather comes, not because it aimed at anyone specifically, but because they were outside and it was raining. That is what Mercutio understood. That is what he cursed with his last breath. Not Tybalt, not the Capulets, not Romeo. Both houses, the whole structure, the entire inheritance. There is a reason this story has not died in 4 centuries, and it is not the poetry, though the poetry is extraordinary. It is not the plot, though the plot is perfectly constructed. It is not even the characters, though Juliet alone would be worth studying for a lifetime. It is because every generation that encounters this story recognizes something in it that they could not quite name before. They recognize the feeling of being young and full of something enormous, love or certainty, or desire for a life different from the one being handed to them, and running directly into the wall that the generation before them built and then forgot to tell them about. They recognize the specific exhaustion of being caught in a conflict that is not yours and cannot be solved by anything you are capable of doing. They recognize Romeo not as a romantic hero, but as a person whose feelings ran ahead of his wisdom, who did his absolute best with what he had, and whose best was not enough. They recognize Juliet not as a tragic heroine in a white dress, but as a person who was smarter than almost everyone around her, and still could not outthink the system she was born inside. And if they are honest, really honest, they recognize the families too, because it is entirely possible to love your children and still, without intending it, without noticing it, raise them inside a cage you built, for reasons you can no longer remember. That is the terrible, durable, inescapable truth at the center of this story. Love was not the problem. Love was the one thing that almost worked. There is a tomb in Verona. You can visit it today. It is a 14th century sarcophagus set in a small museum attached to a former convent, and it is labelled, without any apparent irony, as the Tomb of Juliet. Thousands of people come every year. They leave flowers and notes. They press their palms against the old stone. Some of them cry, and they are not embarrassed about it. There is also a house in the old city centre, with a small balcony on the second floor. The Casa di Giulietta, Juliet's house. In the courtyard there is a bronze statue of Juliet, and her right breast has been rubbed bright and shiny from being touched by so many hands over so many decades. Touching it is supposed to bring luck in love. The walls of that courtyard, every inch of them, are covered in notes. Love letters, questions, confessions, declarations addressed to a girl who may never have existed, written by people from every country in the world, in every language, tucked into every crack in the stone. And then there is this, a real organisation run by volunteers that has since 1937 been opening and reading every letter sent to Juliet from all over the world and writing back. Actual replies. In 30 languages, to people who wrote to a fictional character because they did not know where else to send their questions about love. Think about what that means. For nearly a century, real people in real pain have been writing letters to a girl in a story, asking whether they should stay or go, whether what they feel is real, whether it is worth it, whether love like that actually exists. And other real people have been sitting down in a city in northern Italy and answering them. Because the story understood something, because in all the centuries since Shakespeare wrote it down, no better version has appeared. No story has come along that captures more completely what it feels like to love someone the world has decided you should not. To be young in a world built for people older than you. To run out of time before you run out of wanting. The two families made their golden statues and declared their peace. Verona moved on as cities do. The Adige kept moving south. The stone kept standing. But Romeo and Juliet stayed, not as symbols, not as metaphors, as something more stubborn than either of those things, as a reminder, renewed by every generation that finds them, that the desire to love freely and be loved in return is not a luxury or a fantasy. It is the most human thing there is, and the world has always made it harder than it needs to be. And people have always tried anyway. That is what this story is. Underneath all the poetry and the poison and the golden statues, not a warning, not a cautionary tale about rushing into love, not even a tragedy, not really, not in the way we usually mean the word. It is proof that people try, that they have always tried, that in every century, in every language, in every city, with its own version of a feud, and its own version of a wall built between people who should have been allowed to find each other, there have always been two people who looked at that wall and chose each other anyway, knowing the cost, doing it anyway. Romeo and Juliet did not save Verona. They did not end the feud while they were alive. They did not get to grow old together or find out what they would have become. The world did not reward them for trying. It never does. But here we are, 400 years later, still saying their names. Still pressing our hands against old stone in a city in northern Italy. Still writing letters to a girl who may never have existed. Still sitting in dark theatres watching two people run out of time and feeling it like something personal, like something that happened to us. Because in some way it did, because that particular kind of loss, the loss of something you wanted before the world finished, deciding whether you were allowed to want it, that is not a story that belongs to any one century. So let that be the last thought you carry into sleep tonight. Not the poison, not the dagger, not the tomb. The 5 days, the balcony in the dark, the two of them, for a little while, in a world that had decided against them, finding each other anyway. Let Verona go quiet. Let the Adige carry its cold water southward through the night. Let two young people have, in the space just behind your closed eyes, all the time the world would not give them. Good night.